Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. I'm Trent Christensen, and this is KMMU. KMMU and Main Street Media stream live wherever you enjoy your streaming. We broadcast live on YouTube, Rumble, X, and on our website, kmmu.org. Now please join our host, John Twitchell. This is Let's Talk Utah's Talk with John.
Hello, folks. This is Talk with John. Looking forward to being with you today. And let's get rolling. I've got two great guests, and I will introduce my first guest here in just a moment. But first, let me get this show off to a proper start. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show, that's the show prayer, the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. Then the show mantra, where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right, let's get to my guest. The guest for the next half hour, it's going to be a fast, quick-paced half hour. We're going to bring on the great Michael Letts. Michael Letts is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. They have been responsible for providing thousands of bulletproof vests to our first responders. People doing great work, so we so much appreciate them and what they do. Folks, this is Talk with John here on Main Street Media, Utah, KMMU. You can go to our main pages. You can go to our Twitter handle, Russell and Rumble and YouTube, as well as you can go to kmmu.org and find all the different shows we have on there. So this is Talk with John, and Michael, thank you for joining me.
Always a privilege to be with you, John. You're a great patriot. We appreciate what you're doing for this country.
Well, I'm grateful for you, brother, and I'm grateful to be with you today. So you brought up some breaking news, which is pretty awesome, and I'm going to make sure we hit it. So these are the three topics, folks. There was a assassin that the mainstream media and people like Ben Shapiro are trying to tell us that was a Trump supporter. Now, it's kind of funny. I don't know how many Trump supporters are appointed by Tim Walz and has a Democrat wife. Yeah, and the wife is and in his car, I don't know how many Trump supporters have the No Kings flyers, bunches of them. Yeah, that's not in. I don't know of a single Trump supporter that has that. Bottom line, or that is for that stuff. So we'll be talking about him. We'll be talking about the riots in across America that's got a kickoff in L.A. and then breaking news about Epstein. Michael, why don't we start there?
Well, it's very breaking and very shocking, and it's just developing. Here's what we have, giving your listeners and your viewers some background. Of course, you know what Epstein's all about. And you know, quite frankly, that Epstein was supposedly committed suicide. And basically, we've been trying to release the Epstein files with an awful lot of roadblocks and the redactions, et cetera. They're trying to make sure that it doesn't get out there. Now, that having been said, one of his initial victims, who's been the most vocal, who filed lawsuits, who led to the demise of Prince Andrew and others, has been Virginia Godfrey. Virginia was 16 at the time that this started with her, and she's been doing this, pursuing basically justice ever since she was able to escape the Epstein situation. And because of that, she filed suit against some of these participants, like Prince Andrews and others. And then, quite frankly, she turned all this information over to different federal agencies, the Bureau and others, with all the documentation, videos, etc. Of course, up to this stage, nothing occurred. And so she was concerned that she would be eventually eliminated so that they could move on from this story and bury it. Quite frankly, we discovered about 2 months ago, I think it was 2.5 months ago, coincidentally, she was involved in a tragic accident. A school bus hit her, and they thought had killed her at the time. She held on for 6 days. until she finally passed, but was able to speak during that time. Interestingly enough, they thought that that was the end of the story. As of about 15, 20 minutes ago, evidently there was a dead man switch. Now, let's explain that to your listeners. That's when you have information and you have check in points that you have to continually make. And if for some reason you miss two of those check in points, this information gets automatically released to various organizations or various personnel that you have indicated. She evidently had that in place and nobody knew it. So now suddenly these videos are coming out. First one is just hit. It's her. She videotaped herself. Of course, she starts off by saying, "If you're seeing this, obviously they got me." And so that the dead man switch has been triggered. Some of the shocking things on there, she begins to identify. She says she's got lists and lists. But some of the key personnel she identifies, first two she identifies is Barack Obama. And she says that, he was there for the young gentleman and was there more times than she can keep track of. She goes through very detailed exactly what happened. Bill Gates was the second one. She said, interestingly enough, Bill Gates was not just a sexual pervert, but that Bill Gates was attempting to use the island as a medical facility. He injected these girls with various concoctions to study the effect, much like the Nazis did in the concentration camps.
Wow.
She said the girls knew what was coming and they were scared to death, but they were strapped down and it was done to them anyway. This kind of stuff is just hitting, and it just hit right before I came on to your show. And obviously, it's going to take us some time to look through. The other thing she mentions is she's telling agencies and who was running those agencies, talking about law enforcement, and their involvement in helping to hide or helping to bury. She says she is no doubt, she has the evidence, we're going to see if it comes out, that Epstein is still alive, that he has been protected because of his blackmail ability, because of he is such a asset to these intelligence agencies, etc. So this is shocking, John. It's disgusting, but it's shocking. It makes you choke up emotionally when you see her last statement in this first video. That look, I'm dead now. I'm gone. But hopefully you will kick up and take the mantle, and you'll make sure these people beat justice. And John, I think every American needs to make sure that happens.
Okay. So one name that I don't remember hearing so definitively stated was Barack Obama. That is the first time that I've heard Brock mentioned. Now, there's been questions, but this is the first time that I felt like it came from someone. And forgive me if you've told me in the past, but this is the first time that it's really stuck out to my mind because you said two things that are interesting: Barack Obama and some little boy.
Well, she was very clear. It wasn't just some little boy. It was a pack of them every time. They had fresh, and she's very graphic. Fresh meat every time he got there, and he was there more times than they can keep track of and keep account of. She said she thinks she actually beat Bill Clinton. Of course, Bill Clinton was there for the girls. Barack was there for the boys. And then, of course, talks about Bill Gates. She does throw this in. I'm trying to be very objective. She said it started for her when she was working at Mar-a-Lago. Lane Maxwell. Remember, we've done this for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a member of the club there. Right. He and Lane Maxwell. That Trump moved him out, cut him out, but they were there for some time. And she makes a comment. She says, Trump was never an issue. Now, she stopped there. Could people ask, I'd like to get further information. Probably those questions will come, but she gave no indication that Trump was involved in any form or fashion. But obviously, people can say, I'd like some further information. And we'll see what comes out because, she's dead now. It's the only information is going to be available and she very quickly mentions on the video, this is the tip of the iceberg. Not one video is coming out. Just brace yourself. It's going to be an avalanche of information. I have it all, and it's coming out piece by piece.
Wow. Well, thank you for bringing that to the audience attention, and hopefully next month we get the opportunity to talk about that. Well, when we have you on next, we definitely will talk about it. I'll promise you that. I figure there's going to be a lot more to this story. Let's go to the riots. Now, my question is, how many of these people at the riots are actually just happening to come? I actually happen to know of a few people that went to riots here in Salt Lake that, bottom line, that was them doing it on their own. But it's interesting that here in Utah, I think they went Heber like on a Thursday, then they went to like Friday, they went to like Provo, and then Saturday they went to the Capitol. So I kind of funny how they're not throwing it all at the same time, all at once. They're going from place to place to place. Makes me wonder if there's a little bit more to the fact other than just people showing up spontaneously. I wonder if there's any NGO money or something along those lines in this. What are your thoughts?
Well, there definitely are. Well, I mean, there's no need to wonder. We have the fact, we have the documentation. Here's what we do know. Let's work our way backwards. Their claim, there were 1 million people that protested at over 2,000 locations on Saturday. Well, no, as you pointed out, we've known and we can track it all. It wasn't over one day period. It was over multiple days. There's a reason behind that because we have the records from the bus companies. They transported them. I'm going to be in this particular at 9, this one here at 11. Why did they need difference in times? Why did they not do them all at 9 a.m. on the same day? Can't work that way. You got to be able to transport as many people as you can to as many different locations to make it look like you had a massive crowd. But even if you grant them what they say, which isn't true, and they said they had 1 million people there, John, let's put it in perspective. That's less than 0.5% of the American population. Okay. Now, out of that less than 0.5%, and remember, it really wasn't 0.5% because they moved them around from section to section. Okay. Once you take a look at that, now let's take a look at the funding. Came from 4 different sources. Good portion of it came from CCP, the Communist China, the Communist Party is doing everything they can to make sure now that they destroy what's left of America and they bring it down from within. It also came from a large section of the money came from the NGOs. That means your money, our money, taxpayer money. Like Congress has funded these NGOs and they're spending it to try to destroy America. Third section of it is there's a section of activists. Activists being George Soros, being Christy Walton, from the Walmart Foundation, among others. And then, of course, the final segment of money is from the cartels and child sex traffickers and the terrorist network that is now established across this country. Here's what's interesting. This has not happened before in the past. It is happening now. You have these various active groups that we just talked about, NGOs, activists, the Communist Chinese Party, etc. They've all kind of decided, you know what? Maybe we have our differences, but we all have one thing in common. We hate America. So why don't we join forces and put our resources together and try to do what we can to finish her off? They're now cooperating together. That's what they're doing. We know that for a fact. We have the intelligence. We can see it, can prove everything that we're talking about here. That is why the president signed the Insurrectionist Act. That is why we made the commitment that we would take care of every resource, militarily included, active duty if necessary, to make sure we combat this insurgency. It's a bunch of riotous insurgents that are attempting to overthrow our government from within. And that's why we have dedicated the kind of resources that we have. And John, we're in for the battle of our life. We're in for the battle for the soul of America. But I'm confident we have righteous might behind us. We will prevail at the end of the day.
Well, I want to mention, I forget her first name, but Walton. Notice Christy. Christy Walmart is doing everything that they can to distance herself from that. I would love to see the American public say, we're not going to shop at Walmart for a couple of days. See how you guys like that.
I would welcome that opportunity. I think more than a couple of days, though. I think Walmart, quite frankly, needs to be learned that you don't support America and its values, find another country. Get out of here. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I understand. They say, well, that she's just a member of the family. Just to be fair, I knew Sam well. Christy is not a child. She is a daughter-in-law. But still, you can't tell me that they can't be able to control better how that funding is utilized from the foundation through her. And quite frankly, I'm tired of people hiding behind a cloak, not being true with the American people, and taking the hard-earned dollars of Americans and trying to turn that into the destruction of the land, of the freedoms that we love. We need to call it out, John, and we need to remove it from this country.
So they've been trying to use. They've moved away a little bit, but they're still trying to use the mostly peaceful type comments, right? There's
Mostly.
been a shooting. There was someone shot and killed here in Utah. Then we've had shootings around America, looting. To me, it looks like just a real good reason for someone to go out and steal somebody else's stuff, as opposed to a riot that they really stand behind. At least many of them, that's the case.
Oh, you're exactly right. I mean, look here, there's nothing. These are not peaceful protests. You don't have a protest when you're taking cinder blocks and throwing them to the windshields of police cruisers trying to kill the cops that are driving. You don't have protests when you're blocking or trying to advance on a federal facility and injure the officers that are in there and burn the place to the ground. You don't have peaceful protests when you use it as an excuse to vandalize, to go in and destroy stores, to block traffic and try to shut down the economy so you can't get to work. There's nothing peaceful, there's nothing protesting about that. That is incendiary riots. And quite frankly, that is nothing but those who are attempting to destroy this country. And we need to deal with it as aggressively as we would a threat from overseas, from enemy combatants. It's the same principle, John.
And now the left is trying. Now the left that's in control of this, the NGOs, the George Soroses and the like, are trying to find MK Ultra mind control people that they can go in and take actions. Let's talk about this guy from Minnesota. I mean,
that's part of this whole situation, and here's why it's part of the situation. Here's what's interesting on the situation in Minnesota. You have to take a look at the background, the facts. First of all, the killer was an appointee of Governor Walz. And trust me, I've been in politics, you know this, John, for 30 some odd years. You don't take a coveted position as a commission on the workforce board or anything along those lines and just hand it to somebody on the street because I need a body to fill the position. Those are always what we call political paybacks. In other words, somebody that's a strong supporter of mine, that's been engaged in my campaign, that's contributed financially, or done other things that made a huge difference in allowing me to be elected. Those are paybacks. I give those positions out. He got one of those positions, not because he was a quote unquote Republican, but because of his loyalty to Governor Walz and the Democratic Party. That having been said, now let's take a look at what happened. Why are we talking about the murders that occurred? It occurred to two people and their spouses. There was a state senator. He was shot 9 times. His wife was shot 8 times. Surprisingly, they both have survived. Okay, and they're able to actually communicate. We're getting this story. 9 times shot to the senator, 8 times to his wife. The second one was the speaker, former speaker of the House from the House of Representatives in Minnesota, and her husband. They both were killed. Now, what is the thing that they have in common, the senator and the speaker? First time, as Democrats, they voted against a provision that would increase the budget and increase additional dollars given to illegal immigrants, benefits, health benefits. And here's what's really shocking. If you look at the video, and we have it, of the speaker coming out after that vote, she is visibly shaking. She's trembling. Her voice is crackling. She's saying, I just voted against my party. That may be my last vote. She knew good and well what she was facing. She was dead within 24 hours. Now, let's talk about the particular person that did it. Who they're trying to remember. Here's their narrative. Oh, this is a conservative Republican. This shows you how bad those people are. I told you you shouldn't have any of those people around this country. The truth of the matter is, there's no question he's a solid Democrat. He's heavily entrenched within the party, and he's been used to send a message to the Democratic allegiance and the Democratic members. Get out of line. Guess what's coming? And quite frankly, I think that message resonated loud and clear with those on the inside. Obviously, they're not going to say a word about it. They're scared to death. And quite frankly, what makes them so scared? Let's talk a little bit about what happened. This young gentleman put together he had a latex mask on and utilized gear that was similar to law enforcement. It didn't have necessarily the patch on it, but it had a tactical form, same type tactical pants, same color, etc. He used a vehicle that was unmarked. When I say unmarked, sometimes you can buy used police vehicles, fully decked out, had lights and everything in it. Pulled up after he had shot the senator and his wife, who never survived. Pulled up to the speaker's house with her husband. Got out. Now, here's what's interesting. I want you to listen very carefully to this. Police were already on the scene at the speaker's house. Okay. But yet he manages to pull up, get out of the vehicle. The law enforcement officers get out, confront him. There is a gunfire, what we call a gunfight that pursues. He engages, is able to get into the house, kill both the speaker and her husband, come out and leave. Now, why he had enough time to do that, why they didn't stay engaged in a firefight, how they allowed him access into the house, how he got in, is very troubling, especially when you have law enforcement already there. You tell me, John,
So
how you get by law enforcement unless you don't have some inside connections to get this done.
and with a mask on. I mean, it's not like the still picture of that silicone mask. It's not like it's looks like really somewhat. This isn't.
Right.
No, I almost said Men in Black, not Mission Impossible type.
Correct.
Level
Where you don't
mask.
recognize, you can't tell that that
Yeah,
it's a mask on. It was easy to see that that was not him.
right. It was easy to see that it was a mask that you'd see in some type of, thriller type Halloween movie or something along those lines, right?
And here's the thing from a law enforcement standpoint. Even if the call had not gone out, and we're researching this right now to get you all the facts, but even if the call had gone out that the senator and his wife had been shot, you still pull up on a scene. You have a person get out. He's pulling out a assault weapon that there's no wrong. I mean, law enforcement use it, but why are you responding to a call if we have an active shooter? So we feel like we need to pull out assault rifles. Where's the backup? Why were they not all getting out with assault rifles? When you see somebody that's got on a mask, you can tell pulling out with an assault rifle, and yet somehow he's able to get in. There were no other. The officers weren't killed. The officers weren't wounded. We were laying down. Couldn't stop anything. Why did they disengage? Why did they allow him to go in and to be able to accomplish his nefarious acts of killing the speaker and her husband? Why did they allow him to come back out and be able to leave?
Well, we've got about a minute and a half, probably to 2 minutes before the next guest joins us. So one of the things that they're saying is this is a Trump supporter. This is an Alex Jones listener. I'm like, I just as soon as I heard it was a Tim Walz appointee, I was like, this is a Democrat. This is someone within their own system that they're trying to. My guess is send messages to people.
They are. You hit the nail on the head. Where are they getting their information from? They went and interviewed his roommate. What was the first question?
And that's the weirdest. That's another
yeah.
weird thing. How many Trump supporters have their wife and then some roommate? I'm like, what kind of roommate is he?
And what does his roommate say? What's the first response out of his mouth? Oh, I'm a Joe Biden supporter. But I think Vance was a Trump supporter. Oh, you think? You have any evidence of that? And now suddenly, what does the mainstream media do? Oh, you heard it. He's a Trump supporter. Everybody jump on the bandwagon now. These are these wild conservatives going nuts again. How ridiculous can the mainstream media be?
Good question. Let's figure.
A lot more to come out, John. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
I look forward to talking to you again here soon. Any last thoughts that you want to leave with our audience?
Everything you see going on, there's a reason behind it. None of this is coincidental, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Ukraine, whatever. It's all one major attempt to bring America under. Don't fall for it. Stand united. I don't care what color, what you are, you're an American. We're not going to let them steal and destroy this country under our nose. Our forefathers deserve better. God bless you. God bless America. Let's stand united. Let's win this war, because that's exactly what it is.
Well, he's not quite here with us yet, so I want to dive down just a little bit more into the riots.
You go
What
right ahead.
are you seeing? What type of coordination are we seeing between all of these riots?
Massive coordination is all being done under one terrorist organizational network. And quite frankly, here's how it breaks out. You have, let's just take your crowd. Let's just say you have 100 people. You have 50 people of those who, quite frankly, have been flamed by the mainstream media. They're elderly. They're coming out there. They got a sign, but they have no idea why they're there. They've been told that America is fixing to fall, and they're scared to death. That's the only reason why. They don't even know anything else. You have, out of that other 50 that's left, 30 of those that are probably paid protesters and agitators, paid by all these financial players that we just talked about. Then you have another 20 that are just punks looking for somewhere. Oh, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to knock off the cell store next door while everybody else is protesting, steal a few cell phones. That's what you've got, folks. That's what's happening in America. Don't be deceived by it. It is not the American people that are doing this. It's time we stand up and bring law and order back to this country.
I also find it very interesting that at the very beginning, they had a bunch of Mexico flags. They started handing out USA flags. The optics weren't so great on that Mexico flags, was it?
Didn't work too well for him, did it? Quite frankly, I thought it was so funny. The president of the Mexican Senate said, "Hey, look, we'll be glad to give them all the Mexican flags, and we'll build our own wall if you'll give the whole country back to the whole western part of the country. If you'll give it back to us, we'll be glad to take it and build our own wall, and that'll take care of your problem." Problem is, we've already paid for that country. That portion, we fought for that country. But there are Americans there now, and no, that ain't happening.
No, no. Well, Michael Letts of Invest USA, thank you for joining us. Folks, go to investusa.org to learn more about his organization, providing thousands and thousands of bulletproof vests. Look forward to having you on again in the future. Thank you for joining us today. Take care, Michael.
Thank you. God bless. God bless America. Keep up what you're doing, John. We need you now more than ever.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. All right. I am going to go now to my next guest, David Pyne. David Pyne, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you being here, brother.
Hey, John. Great to be on.
So, David Pyne, and I don't have all of his information up right now. I got home from work, slid in the chair, and got right on. So, David Pyne, will you give our audience a little bit of a background about you and focus, folks? You got to go to his Substack. Please go to his Substack and get his different articles. David, fire away.
Yeah, so I'm a former U.S. Army officer, combat arms officer. I served on the U.S. Army headquarters staff from 2000 to 2003, in charge of armaments cooperation with various different countries, including the Middle East, former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Americas, and Africa. I since worked in the national security field. I do a lot of podcasts, as you know. Write articles on my Substack at dpyne.substack.com. I've been a little bit behind. Last time we talked, I think I had 9 articles that I published in a month, and I don't think I've published maybe one at most since then. But there, events are just happening too quickly, and I've been a little distracted for various reasons, different reasons. But that's pretty much all you need to know, I guess.
Well, let's put it this way. You're here with me now, and that's what we appreciate the most. So we're glad and grateful to have you here joining us today on Talk with John. All right, folks, real quickly, I want to mention this. You can go to all of our different, not just our website, but you can also go to our different channels. We have a channel on X, obviously. We have a channel on Rumble, and we have a channel on YouTube. How can you find those? If you can't find them by just typing in Main Street Media Utah, go to kmmu.org, and you will be able to find a number of our different hosts. And on top of that, you'll be able to find a number of videos of David and I chit-chatting. All right, David. So let's get into it. It's not like we never have anything to talk about. It always seems like it just seems to be ramping up more and more and more. So we've got Russia, Ukraine. We've got what's happening in China, possibility with Taiwan. We now have Israel that is flared up. We have the Ben Shapiro side of things. We have the Tucker Carlson side of things. We've got Trump. We've got a lot going on. And then on top of that, we got some riots going on here in the United States. Now, let's be clear. John made I don't know how strong of a prediction it was, but I said I wouldn't be surprised that if on Cinco de Mayo there were a bunch of protests and someone wound up being a MAGA person that they brought in to do a shooting. Well, I was wrong on the date. I missed it by about a month and a half. But that's what it looks like is starting to happen here. We've got the Minnesota shooter. We had a shooting happen right here in Utah. Supposedly, some guy pulled out an AR-15, pointed it, but didn't fire a single shot. And so I'm like, it seems like they're and then in multiple other states, they have pallets of bricks and blocks being delivered. And when I mean block, I mean like large block construction blocks, bigger than bricks, being delivered. They're broken up, put in backpacks, thrown, Molotov cocktails being thrown at the police. So I was off by the Trump supporters coming in by about a month and a half. So hopefully people will forgive me for the possible first. That was kind of like the first date that I thought things could happen. But they got it going in June. So, hey, the Summer of Love 2025 is starting up now. So where do you want to go first? Riots?
Well, let's talk about the war in Iran.
Let's do.
So this is, I'll just lay it out for you here. The bottom line is today might end up being the first day of World War III, or it might be the day that World War III is averted. We have a situation where the President of the United States is threatening Iran with war, direct bombing strikes, assassinating their head of state, the Ayatollah Khomeini. He's boasted on Truth Social that the U.S. and Israel have together taken control of Iranian airspace. After suggesting that the U.S. would stay out of the war, He's had I think he had a 3 or 4 hour national security meeting in the White House Situation Room, essentially deciding when and where to go to war with Iran. This is an imminent danger to all Americans. And the danger is from the White House. The White House, the president is the one escalating this conflict, assuming all indications indicate that he's planning strikes as early as this evening. And this could lead to the end of the United States. There's obviously a lot to talk about how we got to this point. That's essentially the bottom line. And it's a very scary prospect, even for folks like me that have been prepping for this for the past 13 years.
So let's get into let's start with how we got here. Now, actually, let me kind of make it a little nuanced. Do you think the Russia-Ukraine situation had anything to do with this?
No, they're completely divorced. Nothing to do.
How much do you think that this got started on October 7th?
Well, yeah, this is October 7th, 2023 was, of course, the day that, Israel claimed that Iran gave the green light for Hamas terrorists to conduct terrorist strikes that killed nearly 1,200 Israeli civilians. I agree with that assessment. But then Israel has responded, obviously, with, I guess, even certainly by our standards, a relatively, large scale attack, but nothing like existential or something like that, by killing 31 times as many Gazan civilians and Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and invading all of Gaza, occupying all of Gaza. That's the goal, to control it permanently. Invading Lebanon. Obviously, they've been conducting strikes against Yemen, Lebanon, Syria. They helped overthrow the Syrian government. They are actually losing pretty badly in terms of killing off Hamas terrorists. They've suffered about 12,000 Israeli casualties militarily, while killing a little bit over that in terms of Hamas fighters. Probably 15,000 killed Hamas fighters or permanently wounded. And Hamas fighters are actually much more numerous today than they were when the war began, because it's an existential fight for Gaza. Gaza's really close to not existing anymore, as Trump has pointed out, with the Holocaust that has been perpetrated on them with the Israeli response. And then, of course, Netanyahu has had two main goals, really.
Now, I do want to throw this in. Now, on October 7th, it's not like they hadn't been. Bottom line is, Israel knew that these plans were in effect. I don't know that they necessarily. Okay, in my opinion, most likely they knew it was coming on October 7th as well. The month before, they happened to take the ability of the citizens, especially, I believe it was the Orthodox Jewish citizens. They took their ability to have firearms away from them, and in the two cities that were attacked. And then on top of that, another thing that I find very interesting is they took a lot of their military forces away from those areas. And you have, so I would be curious, and I'm hoping someday soon to be able to talk to someone that knows this, that actually knows this thing. My understanding is that Israel constantly, all the time, even when they're quote unquote not at war, have pilots on the ready to get in planes and to get in helicopters. And my understanding, it takes from one end of Israel to fly to the other end of Israel somewhere in the neighborhood of about less than an hour. It takes, so let's say you have a cold helicopter like the Apache. You don't have ammunition or anything. You get the phone call, hey, the bad guys are hitting us. We need to get that sucker loaded up in the air. It'd be loaded in, let's be generous, half an hour, an hour. And let's say that the helicopters are an hour away. So 2 hours at most on site. We hear stories of retired military people that it took them 7 hours and they were the first ones on site in those areas, in some of those cities, trying to defend their own families. To me, this is, and not only that, there's claims that, like, if a cricket goes across one of those fences, across one of those areas, that Israel knew about it. It almost seems like Israel left the front door wide open. I don't buy it. I don't buy, not having helicopters ready to go. They should have had helicopters up in the air on station in probably less than 45 minutes, if not sooner.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Reports indicate that Israeli intelligence was aware of the planning for the attacks a year in advance. And they were to believe that, just days or hours before the attacks, Netanyahu ordered the withdrawal of at least one and maybe multiple Israeli battalions from the Gaza border, seeming to facilitate the attacks. I mean, this is way too convenient. This is like the Reichstag fire. except that the Reichstag fire was real. That was an actual, it wasn't planned by the Nazis. It was actual Jewish, a Jewish terrorist, domestic terrorist that did it. In this case, it's kind of like 9/11. I'm not a 9/11 truther myself, but there is evidence to indicate that that's a possibility. In this case, the circumstantial evidence, I think, is much stronger still. That, as you say, Netanyahu wanted this war. He's been planning. I mean, he's been prime minister off and on since, I don't know, 95, 96, and so his two, as I mentioned, he has two major goals. One, the first major goal is Greater Israel. That means permanent Israeli occupation of and/or annexation or colonization of the West Bank and Gaza, including deporting, ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from what he considers Israeli lands, and then secondly, to eliminate the head of the stake, as they like to call it, which is Iran. And they're absolutely correct that Iran has a number of proxy forces that have kind of ringed around Israel. Israel being one of the most powerful countries in the region, and these proxy forces are much smaller and less capable, but nevertheless aligned with Iran to one extent or another, and armed by Iran, certainly Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis as well. And that's a threat that he wants to eliminate. And his goal has been for many, many years to use the specter of Iranian nuclear weapons development in Iran to goad the U.S. to join him in direct military strikes against Iran. First, he wanted to take out Iraq. We did his bidding. Bush invaded Iraq, helped Iran take over Iraq, and now I wonder if there's buyer's remorse on that, because it's brought Iranian proxies a lot closer to Israel with longer range Iranian supplied ballistic missiles. But in any case, Iran is far, far stronger now than it was 20 years ago, and is likely has nuclear weapons, as we discussed on your show many times before. And but Netanyahu was using the specter of imminent Iranian nuclear breakout to try to get Trump to join the attacks. And as of today, it looks like that strategy might end up working out, because Trump has fallen for it big time. He is basically behaving as an Israeli puppet. Netanyahu is pulling his strings, and he doesn't seem to have any regard for the safety and security of the people of the United States of America. So, Israel conducted massive military strikes on beginning Thursday night, our time. And those strikes were, according to Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's basically the neocon ringleader in the White House at this point, said that we provided exquisite, quote unquote, exquisite intelligence to Israel to enable them to, know the pinpoint locations of all the Iranian generals and military, top-ranking military officials and nuclear scientists, so they could fly missiles and drones into their bedroom windows and take them out while they sleep, essentially. So, we're to believe that Israel had a massive intelligence failure on October 7, 2023, with a massive, Hamas incursion on multiple fronts, and yet they're able to take out Iranian generals in their hotel rooms, right through the windowsill. I mean, that's it doesn't really make sense, does it?
It doesn't make a lot of sense at all. All right, so I want to read you kind of the counter to this, and I want to hear your thoughts. And I think one of the best voices that is the counter to this thought process, or at least one of the more well-known ones that I like to bring up, is Ben Shapiro. So this is something right off of Ben Shapiro's Twitter. And Ben Shapiro has been calling for this for months, at least weeks, if not months, the attack of Iran and taking out their new ability to arm and get nuclear missiles and nuclear weapons. So I want to kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit. But let's start with just a tweet of his. Israel devastates Iran's nuclear capacity and military leadership with ongoing airstrikes, and he'll bring every detail. He analyzes the Trump administration, his actual 4D chess strategy, and also Democrats literally yelling for attention amidst their increasing irrelevance. So the bottom line is, he is thinking that this is one of the great things. So one of his statements is all along, why does Iran need to have any nuclear material at all? They've got all the oil that they would ever want, can last them forever, last them for generations, is his statement. And on top of that, yes, Iran claims that they were just going to go ahead and use this nuclear material to make nuclear reactors and nuclear power, as opposed to creating nuclear weapons. And those neocons, I'm going to say Ben Shapiro, and a very good job, kind of states that. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think certainly we have to admit that Israel has done a masterful job in terms of their initial military strikes, helped by all U.S. I mean, Trump put U.S. intelligence at the disposal of Israel. He provided all the support in the world, short of direct U.S. military intervention. He has been ordering us to waste some of the last of our missile defense capabilities in defending Israel from continuing Iranian missile attacks, to the point where our arsenal, our missile defenses are so depleted that we couldn't last probably, maybe a few days at most in a war against China. But he's pretty much done everything Netanyahu asked him to do, other than bombing Iran directly. And that's likely to happen soon. But in terms of Ben Shapiro's analysis, Israel doesn't have the capability to destroy Iran's nuclear arsenal. It's those nuclear missile silos are located deep underground, and I've even heard of some of them located a half a mile underground. Half a mile underground is like 2,600 feet. I mean, that's how deep China's main nuclear command center is northwest of Beijing. And Russia's nuclear command centers, they're 3,000 feet underground. So those command centers are likely impervious to U.S. nuclear attacks. So we're talking about Iranian nukes, nuclear missiles so deep we can't even hit them with destroy them with the direct nuclear strike, let alone conventional strikes. Some of them are, we do have a limited capability with the GBU 57 penetrators that I think they're 30,000 pounds, 15-ton bombs. Those can take out some of the underground nuclear missile sites, but they're only deployable by B-2 bombers. So we have B-2 bombers located at Whitman Air Force Base. It's a 30-hour round trip. It might is what I heard recently. But basically, those were deployed in Diego Garcia. We had 6 or 7 of them, which is about a third of the fleet, B-2 fleet, ready to strike Iran. And then Trump withdrew those. But since he's done that, he's set up a refueling, basically what they call an air refueling bridge of tankers, KC-130s and 135s, which will refuel the B-2s in the air. So essentially, the B-2s, if the order is given tonight or shortly thereafter, the B-2s will be launched from Whitman, travel to Iran. They'll take out their targets or attempt to take out their underground nuclear silos, and then they'll probably head to Diego Garcia, where they can rearm there with the additional GBU 57s that are likely already pre-positioned for that purpose. So Trump's he's deployed additional U.S. forces for an extended bombing campaign that could last up to probably 3 weeks. You know, it's there's a lot that can happen. You know, if we bomb Iran for that long. So it's you know, a lot of bad things that could happen to both U.S. troops in the region, you know, our carrier strike groups, and of course U.S. citizens here in America.
Um, so, do you think that Iran has a nuclear weapon yet? Do you think they actually have nuclear missiles ready to be launched?
Yeah, I've said Iran has had nukes probably for the last 10 years. They were actually within 3 months of getting a nuclear weapon back in 2003. I mean, Netanyahu himself predicted that Iran would have nukes by 2000. Back in 2006, I listened to an interview of Kurt Weldon, former vice chair of the House Armed Services Committee. And at that time, he said he quoted the CIA as predicting that Iran would have nukes by 2010. So the idea that Iran doesn't have nukes yet is, to me, very laughable. You know, Iran has been, we've been told Iran is, you know, months, weeks, or days away from
Right.
having nukes for the last 20 years, you know?
Right.
And if they were a peace-loving country, a peace-loving regime that wasn't threatened by, you know, Israeli nuclear weapons, then maybe I could believe that they didn't. But, you know, obviously they are a terrorist state. They're not one that they're not a state that's irrational or rogue state in terms of starting new wars or invading their neighbors or, you know, conducting massive attacks against their neighbors as Israel has done. But certainly they're, you know, an evil terrorist regime, and you know, I'd love to see them gone. But as a nuclear power, you know, there's when you have one nuclear power attacking another, there's a very real chance that the war can escalate to the nuclear level, and that's certainly the case here. You know, I've discussed on other shows that Iran may already have nukes pre-positioned in the U.S. or on cargo ships off the U.S. coast, where they could, you know, launch medium-range missiles from a container ship and take out U.S. targets. But that's not even the main threat, because they have two super EMP satellites, the NOR-2 and NOR-3, which are orbiting over the United States and could be detonated at the push of a button. You know, that's a special super EMP, of course. Weapon is a specialized nuclear weapon that can take out all U.S. critical infrastructure if it's detonated from a height of about 285 miles over the center of the United States. So they have two of those, so they could do kind of overlapping EMP pancakes to take out our entire critical infrastructure. And that would kill an estimated 250 plus million Americans within 12 months' time. So, you know, Trump is playing with nuclear fire. He's playing with the lives of, you know, 250 million Americans. And he's behaving like a deranged lunatic. And I say that as a longtime Trump supporter. So I'm saddened I have to concede, you know, to admit that. But he's really acting in a way that makes the U.S. More insecure and less safe than we have ever been in our entire history.
Okay, here's a statement from Donald Trump. Okay, so let me ask you this. What is Iran kind of statement has been, we're just doing this to create nuclear power. We're getting these isotopes to create nuclear power. Do you agree with that? Is that A, is that statement true? And B, is there any reason to believe that that is a true statement? That's the only reason why they want to do it?
No, as I said, Iran is likely to have nuclear weapons for around a decade. In fact, breaking news, they're now threatening to some kind of event that will, they say, will be remembered for centuries. And I'm predicting that that's likely a nuclear demonstration, perhaps over the Persian Gulf, a nuclear above ground test. We haven't seen a nuclear above ground test since, I think, 1962 or thereabouts. So that would be a stunning display of Iranian military power. But that's the one. That's actually, ironically, that's probably the only thing that could save us from World War III at this point. Because if Trump's decided to do this, and he sees a nuclear, the very night that he gives the order, he's prepared a presidential address tonight, and I'm not sure when that's going to happen. But I've been told that there's a presidential address that will be either live or videotaped that's likely to be given tonight, later this evening. And if he announces that he's going to, start bombing Iran, the ideal time for Iran to test their nuke, to show they have nukes, would be tonight, because he's already threatened the life of the Ayatollah Khomeini, which they revere the same way as the prophet of the LDS Church, perhaps even more, essentially as the leader of their faith, but also their head of state. So it's the president and the prophet, kind of combined into one. And basically, if I'm wrong, if they really don't have nukes, and they don't use, prove that they have nukes, or say that they have nukes within the next within a few days' time after the bombing strikes begin, then I'm probably wrong. They don't have nukes, but they have Trump is giving them every incentive to show that they have a nuclear weapon, including an above ground test that we haven't seen for the past 60 years.
Well, this is a statement from Trump from I think it was yesterday or the day before. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So why is Donald Trump doing this? Do you really think that he doesn't know that they don't have nuclear weapons yet?
Well, it's really interesting. Back in 2019 or thereabouts, he did a tweet. He was on Twitter back then, and he posted a tweet, and the tweet basically said, Iran will not be allowed to build any more nuclear weapons. So that, to me, at the time, I thought that was really curious, that he basically, it indicated that he had reason to believe that Iran already had nuclear weapons, and that was 6 years ago. So I can't vouch for whether Trump sincerely believes that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, or whether it does. I would assume, based on his actions, that he believes they don't, and that he believes Israel's false statements that they're 15 days away from having nukes. And this is so imminent that it justifies a massive bombing campaign that threatens to ignite a regional war, and perhaps leading to World War III, with Russia and China joining the war on Iran's side. But the whole idea, let's just be honest. The whole idea that Iran having nukes is a threat to the U.S. when we have, we have almost 2,300 operational nuclear weapons, including our reserve nukes. Israel has 400. Let's just imagine I'm right, and Iran has maybe 2 dozen at most, maybe 3 dozen. Do we really think that Iran's going to use those nukes against the combined might of the U.S. and Israel when we outnumber them in nuclear weapons by, 100, 200 to 1? More than that? I think the idea that they would do that is absurd. Nuclear deterrence has worked in every instance since we first had our nuclear aggression against Japan, and won the first nuclear war in history in 1945. So, there's the fact is that that the U.S. and Israeli nuclear arsenals are more than sufficient to deter Iranian nuclear aggression, and that there's no reason, even whether they have nukes or not, there's no reason for the U.S. to be bombing or Israel to be bombing Iran right now, because there's no immediate threat, and there's no this only enhances the nuclear threat. So the very threat that we're supposedly, our leaders are claiming we're trying to prevent, we're going to bring about. We're going to see.
We very well might. We might
see an Iranian nuclear detonation on video on the news tonight, tomorrow night, maybe in the morning, and that's going to be a shocker for everyone. And how Trump responds to that, if he responds with a ceasefire or nuclear strikes on Iran that could bring about nuclear strikes from Russia and China on us, will determine whether we exist as a country.
Well, okay. So one of the statements by the Ben Shapiro's of the world and those that support Donald Trump doing this is, there's no other, we've been told if Israel was to ever hit um, Iran that this would become a World War III. And their statement is, well, it hasn't become. They didn't do anything. They haven't done it yet. And no one's coming to their aid. Yet I hear on the other side that there are other countries that are starting to say, like Pakistan, hey, they start taking us down one by one. We need to stand up. So is there any other countries that are starting to threaten to come to Iran's aid in going after Israel and the United States?
Well, Russia has stated that, before the war started, they stated that Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and nuclear silos could potentially result in uncontrolled global escalation. What is it? Uncontrolled global escalation is a euphemism for World War III. So in other words, a war between the U.S., Russia, and China combined. Since the war began, they used a different term. They said it could lead to regional nuclear escalation. So regional nuclear escalation, in my mind, that's not just one country using nukes against another. That's two countries using nukes
At least two.
Against each other. So so that means that would have to imply that it wouldn't just be the U.S. or Israel nuking, using nukes against Iran. It'd be Iran using nukes back. So. Clearly, there have been statements both from Trump, from Russia, from Iran, strongly suggesting that Iran has a nuclear arsenal already, and thus, again, underscores the fact that this war is being fought on a false pretense. I always thought that if the U.S. was destroyed, it would be serving some noble purpose, defending Taiwan from unprovoked Chinese aggression. Or something like that, defending NATO from Russian invasion. But I'm going to be pretty disappointed if the U.S. is destroyed over a false pretense, like Iran is about to have nukes when they've had nukes for a long time and they haven't used them.
Right.
Proof that Iran is not a crazy country. They're contained. They're in the box, as Bush liked to say about Saddam Hussein or Bill Clinton, and there's no reason for this unprovoked aggression against Iran.
Okay, so let me read a statement from X, from a wise person's account. Iran state TV is warning of a major nuclear surprise expected tonight, one it claims the world will remember for centuries to come. I have been predicting for some time that Iran would conduct an above-ground nuclear test, perhaps over the Persian Gulf, if U.S. attacked it. How might Trump respond? By backing off and calling for a ceasefire, fire, or starting a nuclear war with Iran, which Russia, China, and maybe even North Korea would be all but guaranteed to join, leading to the obliteration of the U.S. Does Trump really want to have his legacy be that he was the president that destroyed the United States of America? David, that was from you. How close are we to this? I mean, it seems so. I'm hoping that basically your and my thoughts are wrong, because I personally believe Iran's had the nuclear weapons for years, like you said, and they're ready to use them if they feel attacked. And one of the things that Ben Shapiro said is they have to get a nuclear weapon so they can keep their people under control. Are they going to use a nuclear weapon on themselves, or is it the strength? And how much support. Another thing Netanyahu did was send a transmission into their country of him saying, rise up and take your country back. We're not against you. We're against your leadership. How do you think that message is being received? And do you think it's true at all?
Well, I think without a doubt, the Iranian, Islamist regime is unpopular. But I disagree that the Israeli bombings are undermining the regime. I think it's the opposite. I think I think, it's just like if we had Biden as our leader and he was at 30%
Right.
approval and we started getting bombed and Biden's like, we're gonna defend America, we're gonna strike back. We'd be like, okay, maybe we like Biden after all, and that's kind of, I think, it's the rally around the flag effect, as they call it. And I think this is strengthening the Ayatollah's hold over the Iranian people rather than undermining it. And there's really no effective organized opposition, to the Iranians. They've imprisoned obviously their political opponents, killed some of them. The only ones that are meaningful are in exile. There is a group that's kind of a terrorist group that the U.S. and Israel have been supporting. Muqtada, I can't remember the exact name, but it's a very extremist group. It's basically Al Qaeda on steroids. It's an Al Qaeda type group that really, if they were in charge of Iran, it wouldn't be an improvement. It might actually be more dangerous. It'd probably just be a wash, but it wouldn't be an improvement. There's no reason that we should be supporting a group like that against Iran, especially when they have nuclear weapons. You never want to have regime change against the country that has nuclear weapons, because that's kind of the threshold for them using nuclear weapons against you.
Right.
So that's kind of, Trump has joined Netanyahu and now threatening the life of their head of state and church leader, or rather religious leader. And, that presents a real threat of a nuclear response. Now, if you were to ask me what I think the chances are of Iran using their nuclear weapons, I think the chances are low. But what I do think, I think the chances of a demonstration test are very high, and that would be one that we haven't seen again for 62 years, which is the last time the U.S. and the Soviet Union, tested above ground nukes. But I think the chances are low. I think the chances are much higher that the U.S. or that Iran would retaliate with massive cyber attacks against the U.S. Worst case would be not nukes, but it would be a super EMP attack over the U.S., which would really just take us out, destroy us as a country. The government would collapse. There'd be no power, no gas supplies, and the cars would be non-functional. I think the chances of super EMP are probably low to moderate. I think cyber's moderate to high, but a massive cyber attack would have many of the same effects as super EMP. The cars would still work, but without functioning gas pumps, there wouldn't be much use to have a car. It'd just be a piece of junk, in your driveway. So again, all of this underscores the fact that Trump is placing the U.S. in extreme peril for no reason, on the basis of a lie. It's a little different. It's similar in many ways to Bush. What Bush said about Iraq when he deliberately lied. He knew they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, claimed they did because he wanted to be a war president, outdo his daddy, and there was a fake Iraqi assassination attempt against his dad. No evidence of Iraqi involvement. It seemed completely false. But Bush invaded on all those pretexts anyway, and he did a fishing expedition in force, overthrew Saddam, helped the Iranians take over with U.S. troops and Air Force planes, and then after a year of searching, found Saddam had been telling the truth. He had no weapons of mass destruction. He disarmed under UN Security Council resolutions. And the only weapons of mass destruction were buried deep in the ground, leaking and unusable. In this case, it's the difference, of course, is that Iran likely does have nuclear weapons, but there's no imminent threat against the U.S. or Israel that they'll be used against us. And Iran is far stronger. It's 3 times larger. We have 2,500 troops on the borders of Iran, not like 500,000 we had in '91. And there's a massive mountain barrier in the Zagreb Mountains that really prevent any realistic chances of a U.S. invasion, even if we had 300,000 troops deployed there. They have a large, their armed forces are probably just under 1 million. They have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps controls their nuclear arsenal, weapons of mass destruction, and things of that nature. And then they also have conventional armed forces. Obviously, their Navy is a joke. Their Air Force is a joke, but their Army is, quite substantial. Their missile forces are more, larger than ours, arguably, in terms of nuclear capable ballistic and cruise missiles. And they have hypersonic missiles, which the U.S. has no defense against. So if they were to pop off, accurate hypersonic missiles against U.S. carrier strike groups that venture in range of Iran, there's a very, very reasonable chance that they could light one of our carriers or cruisers or destroyers aflame.
So are you speaking of, forgive me, are you speaking of China or Russia on that?
Iran.
Okay. Iran has a bigger nuclear force than the United States? Or did I?
Well, before the war, it likely had a larger ballistic and cruise missile arsenal that were nuclear capable than we did. So when I say nuclear capable, I mean if they had actually had the warheads, the miniaturized technology, then they could fit, a 200-kilogram warhead in those missiles. The U.S. has, we don't have a large force. Our nuclear forces are, cruise missiles. We have ballistic missiles, but in terms of like ICBMs and SLBMs, the number of missiles we have is, I think, around 640 thereabouts. So Iran has their total ballistic missile force. It was estimated pre-war at 3,000. Some of those are short to medium range missiles with ranges as low as, I think, 300 miles. Obviously the range is important, really important in terms of what you can hit, what you can destroy. But they have one of the largest missile forces in the world. And so that's one of their strengths. And obviously super EMP weapons. I mean, one of 4 countries in the world that have super EMP satellites over the US, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. So really what I'm saying is the window for us to take out Iran has long passed, because they have what essentially I would describe as, guns to our head. And they have the fingers on their trigger. And if they feel threatened enough, as Trump has threatened to kill the Ayatollah Khomeini and take out their nuclear silos, or at least attempt to, those are nuclear red lines, could be nuclear red lines for Iran. Again, most likely not nuclear, but rather cyber or super EMP.
Okay. So what are the proper steps to start walking this back?
Well, it starts with Trump essentially threatening to suspend all U.S. security assistance to Israel until they agree to a ceasefire. And in addition to that, Trump should also declare an immediate withdrawal of 50,000 U.S. troops from the region, following which we could pull back our naval forces a bit away from the region as well. And, so those are important steps. You should give a public address stating that the U.S. will, from this point on, will be strictly neutral in the war. We won't give any offensive intelligence to Israel. We won't shoot down incoming Iranian missiles since we're running out of missile defenses, which we would desperately need in a war with China, for example. Or even to defend the U.S. Military bases abroad against any, nuclear power or major country, and that we will, we seek peace. We seek peace with Iran. We agree to their nuclear deal terms, which would be conditioned, of course, upon them honoring a ceasefire with Israel. But that's essentially what I think he needs to do. And he also needs to fire one of his advisors that have told him he should bomb, support Israel to bomb Iran, or else bomb Iran directly, needs to be fired. Huckabee, Ratcliffe, Rubio, Waltz, all those folks need to be fired. They are clear and present security threats to the United States of America.
So why do you? So one thing, there's a couple thoughts to go through my head. Why is Donald Trump listening to Netanyahu when Netanyahu stabbed him in the back? When he lost he didn't come and support Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. He was the first one to call Joe Biden and congratulate him. I mean, that guy is just a lying, swindling backstabber when it comes to Netanyahu. I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all.
Yeah, he's a snake, just like Zelensky. You know, he's out for himself. He only cares about power. He lies through his teeth all the time. You know, I mean, most of the stuff he says about Iran are lies. He just makes stuff up. I mean, he talks about how the U.S. or Israel has intelligence that if Iran had nukes, the first nukes that they developed, they'd hand over to like Islamist terrorists, you know, non-state actors. I mean, that's absurd. No country in the world's ever done that. They, nuclear weapons are things you want to maintain control of, because you give them to non-state actors, they could use them against you. What if they double cross you and decide to blackmail you and, threaten your capital or your leaders? I mean, no one's ever done that, so he lies through his teeth, and he's really smug, just like Zelensky. I mean, he thinks he's king of the world. And, certainly he's been much more successful in pulling Trump's strings, although Zelensky's done a pretty good job of pulling Trump's strings as well. But the Israeli lobby, the whole thing about the U.S. is we have this massive empire, sphere of influence, NATO, the Far East, the Middle East, all these countries that, look to us for protection, or we have security agreements with. And yet our foreign policy is not controlled by us. It's controlled by itty bitty countries like Israel with massive, nuclear arsenals, and, the size of El Salvador. And then a country like Ukraine, which is a medium-sized country, but a non-nuclear power, a country that's got a population that's likely around 28 million. I mean, this is a country much smaller than, California, probably smaller than Texas in terms of population. And yet, we allow our foreign policy to be controlled by small countries because we allow these lobbyists, Israel and Ukraine lobbyists, to, buy up our politicians. And of course, China's actually the worst offender. And China's bought up most of the politicians in America in terms of Congress. And
not just bought up the politicians, bought up Hollywood as well. And, Israel has a little bit of money in that involved is in Hollywood as well. But, okay, so that leads me, who do you think the worst is? The United States the worst actors in the world right now? Or is it other countries?
I think that's a very wise question. It's one that I was asking myself today. Someone told me, well, we gotta bomb Iran, just not because they might have nukes, but because they're a rogue state. I'm like, how do you fight a rogue state? A rogue state is a country that is irrational, led by an irrational leader. They invade or bomb their neighbors. They launch missiles unprovoked. Who do we see doing that right now? It's Israel. Israel is the biggest rogue state in the world right now. And, that doesn't mean they're a murderous country, although obviously they mass murder Palestinians, 37,000. It's not like Hitler or anything, but it's mass murder. Obviously, they killed, I think, 3 times more Palestinians than Russia's killed Ukrainians in half the time. So they're killing them at the rate of six times higher than Russia's killing Ukrainians, civilians. But, they're the ones behaving as a rogue state. They attacked Hezbollah unprovoked, invaded Lebanon, which they've done multiple times. They were provoked into invading Gaza. So that was a proper military response to the terrorist attacks. But in terms of Iran was minding its own business. They were, by some reports, days away from signing a deal with Trump. And then Trump green-lighted. He was the first president in U.S. history that green-lighted Israel's attacks on Iran. And that's something that Israeli leaders were asking U.S. leaders to do from the Bush era. I mean, every president from Bush to Biden, refused to grant authorization to Israel to do the attacks. And if Trump had said no, I guarantee you there wouldn't have been attacks. We have that much sway. If we denied them the intelligence, if we denied them logistics, if we threatened to cut off their their security assistance or their arms, I can guarantee you that Netanyahu would never have done this attack. So Trump is, I used to think it's a good thing to be pro-Israel is a good thing for a president, and now I see that it's a very dangerous thing because Israel has never been a true ally. They've been increasingly not necessarily an enemy, but really a strategic liability in that they act as a rogue state, and they're creating risks of existential threats to the United States that wouldn't exist without them.
I'm trying to find one of your tweets, and forgive me, I'm struggling to do that. I actually thought it was a really good one. Talking about, and I'm trying to remember, I should have made a note to myself. So here's another tweet of yours. This was all part of Netanyahu's plan to drag the U.S. into World War III, and he is pulling Trump's strings like a puppeteer. Trump doesn't even know he is acting as a controlled asset of Israel's intelligence at this point. Now, we've talked about that a little bit. Who is it besides Netanyahu that's really, you think, in Trump's ear?
Well, it used to be Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz was national security advisor, but he was actually, ironically, he was demoted for the express reason that he met with Netanyahu behind Trump's back to plan U.S. and military strikes on Iran. He was essentially fired for that. So the very thing that he was fired for, Trump vetoed at the time in early April. He informed Netanyahu that he vetoed Netanyahu's request that the U.S. would join in, joint attacks against Iran on April 7th in the White House, and now Trump's doing that. So there's also were pictures of Mike Waltz using an Israeli intelligence app. It was basically an Israeli intelligence version of Signal, the Signal app that archived all the messages and sent all White House messages to Netanyahu, to Israeli intelligence. So and I thought that was just him using it, but apparently it was. I think the entire White House is using the Israeli app.
Really?
Yeah, so that was disturbing. So, needless to say, who needs spies when the White House top cabinet officials, up to and including potentially the President of the United States, are using Israeli spy apps so that all of White House communications are sent back to Netanyahu. It makes it so much easier to manipulate White House officials when they know exactly what they're saying behind the scenes.
Well, I don't understand why in the world we're actually using apps from another country. I mean, very bad idea.
Yeah.
And I don't care if that's friend or foe. What in the world are we doing that? What in the world are we doing with that? All right. So let me ask you this. Is there anyone in Trump's orbit that you actually think can get to him?
I don't. J.D. Vance was my best hope, and he was justifying the attack, Trump's planned attacks on Iran today. I don't know if it was social media or something else. So really, there's no, the only voice of reason I think left in the White House today on the America First side is Tulsi Gabbard. And Trump has attacked Tulsi Gabbard. He was asked, I think it was earlier today, he was in Air Force One, and he was asked, well, Tulsi Gabbard says that Iran, the entire U.S. intelligence community says that Iran doesn't even have a nuclear program. So why are we about to bomb Iran if they don't have a nuclear program? And he said, I don't care what she says.
Right.
He doesn't listen. He doesn't listen. His director of national intelligence, the number one person in charge of all U.S. intelligence, in charge of gathering the intelligence from 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, and who we were told when she was appointed to that position would be briefing him on a daily basis with the presidential daily brief. And his comment was, I don't care what she says. So she's the one who's been warning. In fact, it was earlier this month. I think she shared a video just a week ago or more. She had some kind of video. I don't know if it was Twitter or something like that, where she said, the powers that be are trying to get us into war with Iran, and we need to stand tall against them. And then she got disinvited to Camp David. There was a national security meeting with Trump and his national security officials, and she was. They gave some lame excuse. Oh, she was on reserve duty. I'm like, are you kidding me? You want us to believe that the director of national intelligence is going to be assigned reserve duty when we're in the middle of a crisis with Israel and Iran? No, doesn't hold water.
Well, I could see that they say, well, this is your reserve duty, because but be at Camp David in that role, right? And I don't understand. Frankly, I think that should be not a responsibility she has anymore. Whether she resigns her commission or whatever, yeah, she should step down from that. So here's another tweet that you put out 18 hours ago. Reports are coming in that Trump is preparing to bomb Iran and start World War III with a sustained bombing campaign that could last weeks. Okay, tell us about that. What information, where are you seeing that, and what is the likelihood that that could happen?
Well, it was just last night that I heard. Trump made a statement on the 15th. So that was, I think, a couple days ago, in which he stated that the U.S. was considering entering the war on Israel's side, and he's since made a more definitive statement. Well, actually, no, it was 3 U.S. officials reported by Fox News stated that Trump was seriously considering bombing Iran, and that was that report came in around 10:30 this morning local time. And that was right before he started his national security conference in the Situation Room with all the principals, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, et cetera, and our top generals as well. And that meeting, I think, lasted at least 3 hours, maybe more. Clearly, he's planning. He's certainly going over options in terms of, this is what we could strike. This is, things like that, different option packages. No one can say for sure that he's made the decision to go to war, but there was a post by Barron Trump's Twitter account. And I don't know that it's been verified to be Barron Trump, but, I can't say for sure, but I mean, a lot of people I've talked to said, yeah, no, that's really his genuine X account. And he basically posted that, yeah, we're going to war. We're going to war with Iran. And, Trump's going to make us safe by going to war with Iran. So if that's really Barron Trump's account, then it seems like his dad already told him that we're going to war, and, he's free to post about it.
Yeah. Well, that is very worrisome if that's, I mean, how do we step back from the edge of this? Do you think that China and other countries will get directly involved if this continues on any further than it is right now?
Absolutely. I think if the U.S. bombs Iran, I think we'll see China invade or blockade Taiwan within weeks, perhaps even days. They have the capability to launch a full-scale invasion of Taiwan with as little as 1 week warning. They could do a snap blockade. I mean, we could see just in one day, they have the naval forces to easily blockade Taiwan immediately. Basically, Xi gives the order, and a few hours later, there's a blockade in place. So this is a golden opportunity. I've been stating this forever. First with Ukraine. If we got involved in the war in Ukraine, that Xi wanted the war. Basically, he wants us bogged down in as many wars as possible. And we're actually, there was a carrier strike group that was diverted from the not the Taiwan region, but the Western Pacific, that's been redeployed to the Indian Ocean bordering on Iran to have increased military power in place in case Trump gives the go order. So we're already, we're taking away aircraft carrier strike groups from the Western Pacific that would be really needed to deter Chinese aggression. So it's really a green light. If Trump in fact decides to bomb Iran, for a week or 3 weeks, with uncontrolled regional and even global escalation, I think it's guaranteed that China would invade Taiwan. And if the U.S. defends Taiwan against China, then we'll get hit with massive cyber attacks on day one of major combat. And North Korea will invade South Korea, and Russia might attack NATO, even join in cyber attacks with China, North Korea, and Iran against the U.S.
So something that has been pointed out, and I want to believe by you, Russia is rebuilding their stockpiles. They're producing 4 times the amount of ammunition and rebuilding their stockpiles at 4 times the rate of all of NATO combined. So when it comes to this Israel-Iran situation, there's a part of me that I can see why Israel is doing what they're doing. What I wish the United States would have taken a position is, it's not in our hemisphere of the world. We're stepping back. We're stepping back from this. I understand why many Christians, hey, we've got to support Israel. We've got to support the Jews. They feel it's their biblical mandate. What would you say to those individuals that feel it's kind of their biblical mandate to do?
Well, first, I'd say God, family, country. I mean, we've been told that our priorities should be God, family, country in that order. So we put God first. And when we put God first, that means we keep the commandments. And one of the commandments is thou shalt not kill, shed innocent blood. So in the case of Israel, they've been mass murdering through terror bombings and starvation, 38,000 kids and women, kids I've seen so many pictures of kids with their limbs blown off, 2-year-olds. I mean, it's been really heartrending. And there's kind of a news blackout, unless you're kind of a liberal Democrat or something. It's like you don't even know where to look for those pictures because they're not reported on the mainstream news. And used to be we had fair reporting that reported both sides of a conflict. Now, basically, our news organs are war propaganda agencies of the government. So if the government's saying one thing, we just parrot whatever, we zero in on what our leaders are saying, what the press conferences are saying, and then we're supposed to believe that's the truth. Well, our leaders have a record of lying to us about war. I mean, since at least World War I and maybe before, maybe even the Spanish-American War.
Right.
I would say probably the Battleship Maine was not deliberately destroyed by the Spanish, but in any case, it's difficult for us to ascertain the truth. It's as if our own government, our own intelligence agencies are waging information warfare against us on a level much greater than Russia or China.
I would definitely say that we have a lot of information to state that. Barack Obama spent millions of dollars creating that. We know. Yeah,
but the evangelicals, they're kind of the main ones that say, "Oh, we have to support Israel no matter what, whether they're, invading, bombing other countries unjustified, whether they're always in the right." Essentially, if change the country names and see how we would respond. Let's say it was Russia, and Russia's bombing and invading every country it borders on, and Israel has bombed or invaded every country it's bordered on. Its history. It's invaded Egypt, it's invaded Syria, it's invaded Jordan, it's invaded Lebanon, and now it's conducting massive bombing strikes in Iran. And we would condemn, for Russia, it's an unprovoked act of naked aggression when they attack Ukraine in what is essentially a strategic defensive operation against NATO. But when Israel attacks Iran unprovoked, we have to call it a preemptive strike. it was a war of necessity because Iran was days away from developing nukes, and as soon as they get a nuke, they're gonna we'll see a mushroom cloud over Tel Aviv, either with from an Iranian missile or a terrorist. And it's absurd. It's all lies. It's just a pack of lies, and the American people need to know that, but they don't. And friends of ours, I think, certainly friends of mine, otherwise reasonable conservatives, are saying, "Oh yeah, we need to bomb, Iran if necessary, wipe it off the face of the earth, and that's a good thing. That'll make us more secure." Not realizing that Iran has very powerful nuclear allies in Russia, China, and North Korea that have a veto in the matter as to whether Iran gets destroyed or whether they have massive nuclear retaliation against the United States.
I'd also throw in, isn't that where Armageddon's supposed to start, in that area?
Well, it is, and that's. I have a friend who's I don't think he's LDS like we are, but he is a Christian, biblical Christian, maybe evangelical, and he basically says that, well, we know that Israel is going to survive till almost the end, because that's what it says in Revelations. And then of course, we have a side discussion. I'm like, well, that doesn't mean America lasts till the end. And do we really want to provoke our own destruction, like Hitler provoked Germany's destruction by declaring war on the U.S.? I think maybe that's not such a great idea.
Yeah, there's no biblical statements of the United States sticking around, right? Let's hope we do. We've got okay. You said you wanted to leave a little bit before 6. I want to honor that. When do you need to get rolling? And I still want to hit Russia, and I would like to touch on Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, and I'd like to touch on Taiwan. When do you need to get going?
Maybe 5 or 10.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Then I will make sure we start wrapping it up about 5:53. Okay. So what do you want to hit next? And we'll, if we get a chance to even touch on the riots, maybe we will, but I'll leave that for the very end. What are your thoughts on, what do you want to hit? Russia, Ukraine? Do we want to hit China and Taiwan? What do you want to hit next?
Well, obviously, this is the biggest news of the week, the last week. In terms of Russia and Ukraine, it's pretty much status quo. We saw. I don't think we've talked about it, but the big event there, of course, was Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb, where they had attacked 1/3 of Russia's nuclear triad, bombed a bunch of nuclear bombers. According to the Ukrainians, they took out 34% of Ukraine's either destroyed or disabled, 34% of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet. Russia has come back and said it's around 5%, 4 to 5%. I think the truth's probably somewhere in between, but probably more to the Russian side because, the Russians are a lot more truthful about the war than Ukraine has been. And so, maybe it's 5 to 10%. I probably lower range, 5 to 7%. But let's just imagine how the U.S. would react. Let's reverse things a little bit. Let's imagine that Canada was a Russian military satellite, and they were bombarding U.S. cities and nuclear bases with Russian-made missiles, long-range missiles, nuclear capable. With no nukes, so just purely conventional. But they were taking out our B-52s on the airstrips, and maybe even a couple B-2s. How would we respond to that? Would we respond as Putin has with, just a bunch of conventional missiles, and that's about it? A lot of conventional missiles and drones fired at Kyiv. I think we'd probably pop off a few nukes at Canada, teach them a lesson. So we're lucky to have Putin in charge in Russia. He's a lot more rational, I think, even than Trump is. He doesn't threaten to invade other countries without very good reason. Not saying he's a saint. Obviously, he's a brutal dictator that kills his political opponents, just like Zelensky. But he's someone who's genuinely been wanting peace with the United States. And the Russians were very excited, when Trump talked about, having Russia as a strategic partner, ending all aspects of the conflict with Russia, not just in Ukraine, but in a comprehensive manner, kind of a new mutual security agreement not totally along the lines of what they proposed in 2021, but something very, very beneficial. Massive economic cooperation, lifting of all sanctions, maybe U.S. investment in Russia, recognizing a sphere of influence for the Russians in the former Soviet Union, aside from the Baltic republics, in exchange for them recognizing a sphere of influence for us in NATO and in the Western Hemisphere. And that was a brilliant plan that Trump had. I mean, I was just flabbergasted how I almost thought he was reading my stuff. I'm sure he wasn't, but great minds think alike. And he had obviously had some good people. I mean, if you look at what he's doing today, you're like, well, they're a bunch of idiots. They're a bunch of lunatics, running the country. But in terms of that idea, it was a very, very important, great strategic idea. But sadly, we know that I think April 21st or thereabouts, Rubio presented Trump's 22-point peace plan. That was the Kellogg peace plan, and it was a plan that I knew and I'd stated multiple times that Russia would not accept. And sure enough, they didn't accept it. And instead of, I predicted that once that was rejected, that Trump would try to negotiate, because he's always boasting about he's a great deal maker. But in this case, he has not really had any serious negotiations with Russia. He's hasn't openly refused to meet with Putin, but he hasn't.
Is Putin a better deal? Is Putin better at making deals, or at least negotiations, than Donald Trump? Right now, I say the one that's winning the negotiations battle right now is Putin.
Well, I mean, I think Trump. This has been a massive failure of Trump's diplomacy. I was on a different program last week, and basically Trump's 0 for 3. He promised to end the war in Ukraine on day one of his presidency. He promised to end the war in Gaza. He promised to make a nuclear deal with Iran. He's failed abysmally at all three of those. The closest one he got was the nuke deal. He actually got pretty close with the nuke deal. And he actually had the ceasefire in place that was a really great ceasefire for Israel. It was really, really great from a U.S. perspective. Not very good from Hamas perspective, but we don't want Hamas to have a good deal. But then he decided to do a 180 and give Netanyahu the green light to violate the ceasefire and to reinvade Gaza, and that's been a huge disaster for peace. And just really a gaping wound, that's created the conditions for this war with Iran as well. But Trump has been really the worst deal maker. I mean, he's made a couple trade deals, which are really unimportant for U.S. They don't have anything to do with U.S. national security. But he has, he appointed a lot of neocons to advise him. He's given Rubio unprecedented power over U.S. foreign policy and national security policy. He's marginalized his, Tulsi Gabbard, who's really, along with J.D. Vance, has been kind of, the America First conservatives. I was hoping Pete Hegseth would be as well, but he's turned out to be a neocon. So, the neocons have hijacked the Trump presidency, and I would consider it a hostile takeover. And in the process, they've hijacked the president himself. I mean, they're manipulating him with constant streams of disinformation. The president was asked if he knew that Ukraine tried to assassinate Putin with a drone attack against his helicopter, and he didn't know. He was asked something else. He didn't know about that. He wasn't aware that Ukraine had a massive missile attack against Russia on Victory Day that threatened foreign leaders. He only hears what he's told and by U.S. intelligence, and apparently it's all it is Russia. Putin's a war criminal. Russia's having massive drone attacks, and they're trying to kill civilians. None of which, at least the civilian part's not true. Putin hasn't targeted civilians, and the daily death rate for Russia killing Ukrainian civilians, I think, is last time I computed it, I think it was 173 times lower than the daily death rate for German and Japanese civilians that that we killed with the British during World War II. So Russia's conducted the war very admirably in terms of that. Stupidly in other ways, of course, because they haven't tried to take Kyiv, and they withdrew their troops prematurely when victory was in their grasp back in April of 2022. Yeah, Putin's not a war criminal. He's definitely an aggressor, obviously, but I mean, there's never been a war that's been more provoked than the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Let's hit China, Taiwan real quickly. Your thoughts there. You said earlier, and I've thought this myself, man, now would be a fantastic time if I was China to go after Taiwan.
Yeah, I've been surprised that Xi Jinping has waited this long. I've been saying since 2020 that 2025 was kind of his main deadline for forced reunification with Taiwan if peace talks or reunification talks fell through. And obviously, we've seen no unification talks at all. I do think that I think he's probably extended that timeline to 2027, but he's looking for the opportunity. We don't really. I guess we make up our own pretext. We kind of make up our own pretext for invading other countries. But Russia and China, they try to have. It's very important to them to have good pretexts for war that make them look like they're not really the aggressor. They're more the aggrieved party in terms of going to war. And so, but in this case, it's really all about maximizing the chances of success, minimizing the chances of U.S. military intervention. Because despite being the most murderous and genocidal country probably in world history, the truth is China doesn't want war with us. They have every belief that the U.S. will go to war with them when they decide to invade Taiwan, but they'd rather avoid it. Their strategies work very effectively in terms of hostile takeover. Obviously, they had basically a Chinese agent in the White House under Joe Biden for 4 years that was bought and paid for with $31 million of communist Chinese money. And probably most members of Congress are essentially being paid by Chinese lobbyists. And they've turned us into a deindustrialized colonial economy, where we can't even build advanced weapon systems without Chinese rare earths and critical components. So they're kind of in a catbird position, in terms of establishing gradual dominance over us, economically, militarily. I mean, their military is better, more powerful, really across the board than ours is. Only in terms of naval forces are superior.
Okay, so you think their tank forces are superior? You think their personnel forces are superior? You think their aircraft is superior? Or is it just they have...
Let me just nuance that. So, aircraft for aircraft, ship for ship. We have better ships. We have better aircraft. They have a larger air force. They have a larger army. They have a larger Navy, a larger Coast Guard. They have the largest nuclear-capable ballistic missile force in the world by, I think, 7 times. So what I'm talking about is overall power. So their army is more powerful than our army. In terms of troop for troop, ship, tank for tank, I think we're better. We're better trained. Our weapon systems are better. But they have they have weapon systems we don't have. They have, mobile missiles. They have mobile nuclear missiles. They have multiple different types of hypersonic missiles. They have super EMP weapons. They have superior cyber offensive capabilities, ASAT capabilities. I think we're probably the same. We have very powerful anti-satellite systems in space that are on par with Russia and China. They have a manufacturing industrial base that's almost 4 times larger than ours by my calculations. So basically, what I'm saying is, if we were to have a conventional war between the U.S. and China in the Pacific, it would be essentially the Pacific War of World War II in reverse, where we were able to outbuild the Japanese in ships, where they couldn't replace their ships. We built 150 aircraft carriers to defeat them in 4 years, 3.5 years, really. So they could do the same thing to us. We know that through top secret intel that was leaked by, I think it's Airman First Class Teixeira on Discord. Came out that the Chinese have a shipbuilding capability of 232 times higher than ours, 232 times to 1.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, and that's just overall ships. So we can't say that it's warships, but they could convert it to warships.
But
so
a lot of their ships, I think all their ships that they build are to military specs as far as the hulls. So,
well, yeah, I think that's true. Certainly in terms of ferries, they have dual use transports that can be very quickly converted to amphibious transports. I think they have at least 360 of those. Basically the size of a cruiser, a U.S. Navy cruiser. I think that's true. They could convert, and really they have 63 times more merchant vessels than we do, and it's the merchant vessels that provide the supplies, the logistics to opposing fleets. So, I mean, just imagine they're operating, in a war with us over Taiwan. They're operating in their backyard. They don't need 63 times more.
Right.
More merchant ships than we do. They could have 63 times less and probably would be, maybe not okay, but they could manage. But with the U.S. at that disadvantage, we can't even rearm and refuel our ships at sea. We're redeveloping that capability, but we lost that capability a few years ago. It might be very close to getting it back. Maybe that's something we can restore quickly. But essentially, if they were to take out our bases in the area, we would basically run out of. We'd have to take our ships back to Pearl Harbor, and that'd be a 2-week trip. It'd be 1 week there to Pearl Harbor, and obviously there'd be time for the actual refueling and rearming. But it's a 2-week return trip. So, what's going to happen? They have all their ships in the area. They have 95% of their ships in that region of the world. We have 15% of our ships in that region. So even if we had more ships, which we don't, we actually have a lot less ships than they do. It's going to be 10-1 advantage for them. And anywhere we fight with China, even if it's like all conventional, it would likely be decided in a matter of 3 weeks. I think they could take Taiwan in 2 to 3 weeks to get them to surrender. And we need much more time than that to mass the necessary naval and amphibious forces to even have a chance to liberate, to stage an amphibious invasion of a Chinese occupied Taiwan. I think it would take, many months. I just don't even think it's possible.
The bottom line is, you've already said it. We have to get for our military components. We have to go to China to get those.
Right.
How do we do that?
Right. Well, so they can build weapon systems, advanced weapon systems at a massive rate. We can't without them. So who's going to win the war? I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's very obvious. Okay, so let me ask you this. I'm going to bottom line this. I'm thinking the headline. What is today's headline? I'm going to say David Pyne says we are very close to World War III. Have we ever been closer to World War III than we are right now?
Arguably during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that's it.
Maybe. I think we had some advantages in World War III that we don't have, or in Cuban Missile Crisis that we don't have right now.
We had 5 to 9 times more nuclear weapons than the Soviets at that time. Now Russia has at least 4 times more, maybe 7.
Yeah. I see us being the small dog, and people don't realize it. I keep on hearing we've got the biggest and best military in the world, and I'm like, that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
Well, we might have the best, but we definitely don't have the biggest. All right. David Pyne, we are way past the time that you asked for, so I'm going to say thanks for joining me again today. Look forward to having you back. Let's hope that next time we talk, we go, woof, we avoided it. Let's hope that we're not having let's hope that in another week or in a couple of weeks, I'm not calling you up to say, hey, World War III has started. So, folks, let's pray for peace is the bottom line. Do you want to give us your final comment?
Yeah. If you would like me to come on, if something major happens, if a bombing campaign starts, you want to bring me back in a week or two, feel free to do that. But thanks again for having me on your show. You're a great patriot and appreciate all you do. And it's always a pleasure. But if your viewers want to learn more about me or read what I'm saying, you can go to my Twitter account at America First Con, or you can go to my Substack at dpyne.substack.com.
Definitely go to his Substack, sign up for his letters when he sends them out. And folks, let's pray for peace. David Pyne, thanks for joining me, brother. I'm going to go ahead and end it. Thank you for joining us. This has been Talk with John. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.